America, it is a dark day for mouthy Negroes, of which I am one. Both I and Chris Rock are mouthy Negroes, and some would say it's a job or it's a vocation, right? So I talk here, and then I'm a philosopher, so I do a lot of talking out there to the people, and it's apparently it's open season on us. You can do what you want to us if we make you feel a certain sort of way. Now we have critical race theory laws that are passing through state legislatures that say that I can be fired for making white kids feel uncomfortable about being, the bearers of an unfortunate legacy that they need to make right. And then now you have an extra judicial violence sanctioned by one Will Smith that says that if I make a woman feel uncomfortable about anything that she doesn't have control over necessarily, doesn't matter what her status is, she can she can deputize some man, or some man can self-deputize to violently enforce her dignity or honor, right? To assault me, right? So there's a state-sponsored sanction and an unofficial sanction that protects, and the important thing, women, and for my purposes, white women, from my quality of critique. And as a black male, there's a peculiar kind of vulnerability that comes with that, right? So there's something called black male vulnerability. Tommy Curry's book, The Man Not, is actually a wonderful study that actually takes black male vulnerability seriously. And what does it mean that so many people can just kind of point and other people will shoot a Negro? And so the idea that, like, you're not only vulnerable because you're black, you're peculiarly vulnerable because you're a man, because Regina Hall made some jokes about their marriage, the Will Smith, Jada Pinkett Smith marriage, and Will Smith didn't feel called to slap her, and she was on the money. Like, Chris Rock made a joke about Jada Pinkett Smith, not Mrs. Will Smith, Jada, calling her, comparing her to Demi Moore. And I've seen, first of all, G.I. Jane is a good movie. Like, I enjoyed it. And not just because Demi Moore was hot in it, but Demi Moore was also very hot in it. So it's not as if anyone could have played that. She didn't play someone sickly or anything like that. Like, she was awesome and gorgeous and bald and, awesome. Right. So, part of the movie was Demi Moore actually achieving something that Anne Bancroft, another woman senator, didn't think she could achieve, and how that caused that certain problem. So, the idea that mouthy black guys are vulnerable because they are mouthy black guys is a problem for not just me, because I happen to be a mouthy black guy. By the way, if you in support of mouthy black guys, go ahead and go to www.funkyacademic.com and kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month, because the world needs more mouthy black guys. We should be giving, Chris Rock should deserve something like a Purple Heart for being injured in the line of duty. Because the world needs mouthy black guys. Mouthy black guys make America great. And so we need our own month. We need our own, at least a week. Can I get a week in defense of mouthy black guys? Because mouthy black guys will save this nation's soul if it comes down to it. And, you heard it here first. And, and I do this for the kids. I do this for all the young mouthy black guys in there, not just for myself, but for all of them. And so we need to talk about Chris Rock and his vulnerability as a mouthy black guy who was a professional mouthy black guy. Like myself, like I'm a professional mouthy black guy who needs to be protected for free speech so that I help other people see the truth. Or for Chris Rock, so he helps other people laugh. Like, I appreciate, I need a culture that doesn't make guys like me more vulnerable, right? So now I'm vulnerable for making white people uncomfortable. I could be fired, according to some laws. And Now, and I'm also vulnerable for making women, including white women, uncomfortable. I am now can be the victim of extrajudicial violence, the legitimized victim of extrajudicial violence. You've exposed me to Klan rule, both in codified in the law and in the extrajudicial violence in a way that I do not feel comfortable. Nobody asked me. And I think this is an important thing, and it was done through gender, and I think that's very important because a lot of people come here because I actually kind of pull back the veil in a way that's I think at least somewhat charming about how gender is used to enact a racial project, right? So remember, Will Smith didn't smack Chris Rock for Will Smith. He smacked it or he's not being legitimized for doing it for him. He's doing it as to protect Jada, right? So it's this protection narrative that ends up somehow with violence done to mouthy black guys, of which I am one. But not only am I one, I have a son. I hope he comes to be a mouthy black guy. And I'm just in defense of mouthy black guys in general. I think the world needs more of them, and someone needs to fight back. And the peculiar kind of vulnerability that goes along with being a mouthy black guy. And there's also a peculiar kind of virtue that America needs that is only going to be produced or most consistently produced through the words of mouthy black guys and through their vulnerability. Having had entire institutions sicked on me, like back when the University of Georgia was sicked on me, it turns out that it was a lady professor who did it. And so like, there's a gender aspect of sicking institutions on mouthy black guys that ends up being on the wrong side of racial justice, right? So now I can't make white kids uncomfortable in the classroom, and I can't make white women uncomfortable because then they can, auto-populate or like be around someone who self-deputizes to assault me. Right. So it's not just, I no longer have to worry about just a bad review. I have to worry although my official course reviews are unlike anything the philosophy department at UGA has ever seen. But the official, some people get mouthy. Right. So that's a real peculiar kind of vulnerability that the culture is not really being sensitive to. Right? All these people who say well, nobody protects black women. That is both, we need to protect you from what? Right? So we need to protect you from what? Yes and no. Nobody protects black people, and that is expressed in black manhood and black womanhood in a different way. Nobody protected Chris Brown, R. Kelly, or Lil Wayne, or DaBaby from all being sexually molested, right? Oh, you didn't think I was going to go there. You thought I was going to talk about them as being perpetrators. But all the people I named, in addition to being perpetrators, were themselves long-term victims. But nobody talks about that because there's a peculiar kind of black male vulnerability that means that they can't actually be victims of crime. Chris Rock, nobody's talking about Chris Rock being a victim. He's a victim. They can talk about, you might be able to talk about Jada being a victim. You might be able to talk about not just Jada. You might be able to talk about Will Smith being an aggressor, but you don't talk about Chris Rock being a victim. And I think we should center victims, right? Isn't that what responsible people do? And I'll say that, and why I say that is I have a clip, not a clip. Here we go. I'm going to put it up and make it big, make it plain.
To the beat, y'all.
Yeah. Sound good to me. Never change the ways for the world or the government. If I was the president, then I would state facts. You leave it up to me, I'll paint the White House black and it'll feature in your front.
you can see me now. You can see me now. All right, good. I thought the internet was going to betray me. I do not like being betrayed by the interweb. But I think I can put up this clip. And now I'm going to make it bigger so that you can see. And it's a woman who says, I decided that I would sit back and listen to women's voices, black women's voices on the issue on TikTok before forming an opinion, as it was a black woman who was harmed in the scenario. I missed the part where, I'll read this again. I decided that I would sit back and listen to black women's voices about the issue on TikTok before forming an opinion, as it was a black woman who was harmed in the scenario. I missed the part where Will hit Jada. I saw Chris Rock get hit. Unless we're going to call that hate speech. Talk about alopecia like myself. I'm a victim, and I got a big old bald spot that's just only growing. It's like the sub-Sahara. It's like the Sahara Desert, just kind of expanding in the back of my head. And I thought it was Chris Rock who was the victim, but apparently I'm confused because no one's talking about Chris Rock as a victim, as a peculiar victim, and centering Chris Rock in the story. That's why I made this story. So because he's peculiarly vulnerable in a way that it's almost impossible to see him as a mouthy black guy as being a victim. He's not the right kind of victim. Black guys have to be the right kind of victim, right? Remember when we were talking about this with Michael Brown? He was the wrong kind of victim, right? Chris Rock isn't the right kind of victim. And there are a lot of takes that are some variety of, well, he deserved this. I don't subscribe to violence, but Chris Rock deserved it. A lot of takes from the feminist crowd. I don't subscribe to violence, but he deserved it. I'm a prison abolitionist, but he deserved this. That's ridiculous to me, because I did a whole video about this, how Jada's her own person, and part of what it is to be her own person with her own job is to take lumps like everybody else who's fancy for a living. You are a public personality as your job. You get to go to the Oscars, and that means you get to take your stuff. And then someone said, well, it's women sicking guys to do their violence isn't a whole thing, to which I had to actually bring receipts because I happened to study some things. And it turns out that this is from a guy named Bonner. He's a Southern historian, and he was writing about the Civil War. And I just remember this because I thought it was pretty hilarious. I'll read. Even Southern women whose suffering in war often proved in many respects to be greater than that of their menfolk have contributed in a high degree to the martial spirit of their section. In many Southern towns, on the outbreak of the Civil War, the girls sent white petticoats to those few young men who were slow to volunteer. Right? During World War II, the United Daughters of the Confederacy were worthy heirs to this tradition. So women have a role to play in sicking men on people they want violence done upon, right? And so in the whole piece, Bonner is talking about why the military is vaguely Southern. And if you talk to anyone in the military, they'll tell you that the military's kind of got a Southern accent, and that's not an accident, because they're disproportionate, both officers and enlisted, from the South, because there's a martial spirit that's tied to race control. And it wasn't actual, the honor culture, and women are not innocent of this. So we have to talk about that. So we also have to talk about what it means that mouthy black guys can't make white people uncomfortable according to the state legislatures, and they can't make women uncomfortable without triggering extrajudicial violence. So you can get fired for making white people uncomfortable, and you can get assaulted for making women uncomfortable. But if you're going to do serious work in redressing racism, it's going to involve making a lot of white women uncomfortable, because a lot of racism is held down by versions of womanhood, right? And they're the people who sick people on Negroes. It's not an accident that so many lynchings emerged from the accusation of rape and accusations of wayward looking. He eyeball raped me. That's gotten a few black guys killed. And then, I think a lot of these like fake feminists, or real feminists, I don't know, but the ones who want the carceral feminists who are okay with like violence as a means to secure their comfort, they want what Carolyn Bryant had. And Carolyn Bryant's the one who sicked all the area men onto Emmett Till. It was a trigger for the violence that ended up with Emmett Till dying, right? So no small number of black women want that as a means of protection. And that's what Will was offering. And so when I see someone like, there's a tweet by Alana Van Zant, the lifestyle guru, about how like we need more Will Smiths and he was a real man, and she's grateful for the Wills. That makes me uncomfortable, because that creates a culture that actually makes it harder for me to live, and not just eat, but to actually live. Like, she's made my life more dangerous insofar as you commit yourself to like actually getting to the root of racist systems, right? And that's going to like provoke feelings in people. And then the witnessing of feelings in some people is going to provoke duties in other people. And those duties end up with me being assaulted, right? So this honor culture should be something that feminists argue against. They should say, like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, I think, actually wrote a nice little essay about how, these things infantilize Jada. And I think Jada can do her job, and part of her job is being the butt of jokes. That's why she gets paid so much, because then she gets into her town car with her husband and they drive through LA amongst masses and masses of tent cities and the homeless to go home and like have their private chef make them a salad, and then relax in her in-house jacuzzi, all paid by being a public personality. So that's part of the cost. Will Smith knows that's part of the cost. He admitted as much. He doesn't think, so when you say that Jada shouldn't have to pay that part of the cost, you're saying that Jada shouldn't have a real job. And I have a problem with that. So I also have like the idea that like people need to take seriously that this makes guys like me more unsafe. And if you care about my safety, be Team Chris. Talk about black male vulnerability and what it means to be a mouthy black guy in a nation whose justice claims need mouthy black guys. Right? So I'm going to do another one real quick, but I want to tie the arguments together, right? So black male vulnerability is a peculiar place that black men are in, not only being black, but being male, right? Tiffany Haddish doesn't get slapped. Regina Hall doesn't get slapped. But being black and male, people prove their own identities by the violence they're willing to extend to you. You see this with anyway. And also how that's licensed through both extra legal measures, through everyone just applauding the culture of Will Smith's slap, or saying, I don't support violence, but somehow his assault on Chris Rock isn't violence. It's retaliation, although Will Smith had to actually get up and like haul his whole butt down there to do it. Walk that long walk to do it. It's somehow retaliation. So that's what black male vulnerability is. It's not just vulnerability from being black, it's vulnerability that's indexed to being black and male. Right? That's what Chris Rock had, and that's what we saw. Other people find their identity by the violence they're willing to do to black males, especially if they're straight. All right, so, and it's not especially, but peculiar. I don't think Laverne Cox gets hit like that, and I don't think RuPaul gets hit like that. So there's that. Also, it's not just extrajudicial, it's actually judicial. That like not only can you not make women feel bad for being women in some way, in any way, without triggering some sort of violent response, you can't make white people feel bad And that's like as like through the state legislature. You'll get fired from your job as a history teacher or a theorist if like white kids are uncomfortable, even if the history is uncomfortable and the theory is uncomfortable, but very explanatorily powerful. But if it doesn't matter how explanatorily powerful it is, if it makes white kids uncomfortable, it's verboten. It's disallowed. And if you're doing any real work on race and gender, it's going to make white women uncomfortable. Because like it's just every road leads there as like the bottleneck. Even if it's only 10% of the problem, it's 10% that's the bottleneck. That you can't get to the other 70% because this 10% is somehow untouchable. Right? So if you're doing serious work on race, you're going to run into gender. You can't talk about Emmett Till by just talking about the people who lynched him. You also have to talk about how it's triggered, which means that you have to talk about Carolyn Bryant. So you're making people of my vocation, you're making it illegal to be a person of my vocation. All right. What that means, go ahead, talk about it. Go ahead, like I said, go ahead and kick it down in $5, $15, or $50 a month in www.funkyacademic.com. And like I said, I'm going to come right back and do another one on something completely different. Take care, and I will see you if you're watching live in a few moments. If not, next week.